Today we're going to look at Bernard Care Center, which is located at 4335 West Pine Boulevard in St. Louis. State and federal inspectors completed this survey in April of 2024, and as I record this in March of 2026, this is the most recent annual survey that we have. The report is 71 pages, and if you have a loved one here or you're considering this facility, I recommend that you read this survey and any others that are available about this facility. I'm David Terry. I'm a personal injury attorney in Missouri and Illinois, and I've been handling nursing home abuse and neglect cases around the nursing home industry for 25 years. And I think that I've seen just about everything that can happen to someone in a nursing home. So today, let's look at what surveyors found at Bernard Care Center during the most recent survey that we have. So I want to start with a resident that surveyors identified as resident 36. This is a person with severe cognitive impairment, intellectual disabilities, and a seizure disorder. Somebody who was fully dependent on staff for every transfer and every movement. And in the span of about 2 weeks, this resident, according to the survey, fell 3 times, hitting their head each time, and was sent to the hospital after every single fall. On January 25, staff found that this resident was on the floor next to their bed, bleeding from the face and forehead. 2 lacerations that resulted in a trip to the hospital. February 2nd, 8 days later, the resident fell twice in one day. First, this resident slid from their wheelchair into the dining room and hit their head on the arm of the chair. That same afternoon, they slid out again and struck the metal handrails. Another trip to the hospital happened as a result. And on February 8th, the resident slid from the wheelchair, hit their head on the floor, and suffered a closed head injury. Another ambulance trip to the hospital. 3 falls, 3 head injuries, 3 hospitalizations in 14 days. Now here's where the facility's response got the attention of the surveyors. The fall risk assessment after the January 25th fall scored this resident as a level 1, which is minimal risk, the lowest category. But the form was filled out so incompletely that seizures weren't checked, antipsychotic medications weren't checked off, unsteady gait wasn't checked off. The resident was on multiple sedating medications, and none of that made it into the score that determines the resident's risk of falling. The February falls pushed the score to level 4, which is the highest level, and the facility's own policy required an immediate interdisciplinary team meeting and a full care plan update. But inspectors found no such documentation that any care plan meeting was ever held. The care plan still didn't identify this resident's transfer requirements, still didn't address their behavior of lowering themselves to the floor, and still hadn't been updated to reflect any of the 3 falls. Now, when the surveyors watched a Hoyer lift transfer in this room on April 15, they observed staff tilting the wheelchair backward and propping it up with their own body with the brake unlocked, while the resident was suspended for 4 feet in the air. Multiple staff told inspectors that this was not safe and the chair should have been upright and locked. And upon interview, the administrator agreed. The fall mat that was to be next to the bed, well, it was folded up against the wall 10 feet away from the resident. Now let's move on to the second issue I want to talk about. There's a second resident who was identified as resident 119 who suffered from multiple sclerosis. This resident told surveyors on April 15 that the sit-to-stand lift was broken, but staff members were continuing to use it anyway. The legs apparently didn't work properly, and something was visibly dragging on the bottom. And this resident told surveyors that they didn't feel safe. On April 18, surveyors watched a transfer take place, and the CNA pressed the button to spread the legs, and the left leg spread, but the right leg didn't move. The other CNA stood on the right side and manually kicked the leg open with their foot. Both CNAs confirmed that the lift had been broken for at least 2 weeks. Neither one of them had reported it. The nurse on the floor said she had no idea that the lift was broken, and the maintenance director learned about it the day of the survey. So a broken mechanical lift used for 2 weeks on a resident with muscle weakness, and nobody said a word. So now let's go to the third section I want to talk about. Surveyors also documented what daily life looked like for residents at Bernard Care Center. For at least 2 weeks, residents on the 300 and 400 halls were served every meal on styrofoam plates with plastic utensils. The dietary manager confirmed that this started when the dishwasher broke and continued even after it was fixed, because she wasn't yet comfortable with it. The administrator told surveyors it was absolutely not home-like for residents to eat with styrofoam and plastic when the dishwasher was working. Food temperatures were apparently also consistently below the minimum levels required, and residents described the food as, quote, nasty, flavorless, and not worth eating. Let me quote from page 64 of the survey, where a surveyor identified her observation of a resident that she identified as resident 84. And I'm going to quote here, quote, observation on April 16, 2024 at 12:49 p.m. showed the resident sat in his or her room next to a bedside table containing a plate of food. The plate had a scoop of dark green cooked vegetables, a scoop of mashed potatoes, and diced beige meat in a dark brown oily sauce. During an interview, the resident said that the food does not look good. He or she is not sure what the meat is, and he or she does not want to eat it. He or she is not given a choice on what meals to eat. End quote. Resident 79 suffered from weakness on one side of their body and was seen sitting in bed trying to eat with a plastic fork. The resident was trying to spear pancakes, but the fork couldn't get through. The pancakes slid around on the styrofoam plate, and then 20 minutes later, most of the food was untouched. The resident said that they had just given up. They couldn't get the food onto the fork. Surveyors also documented room conditions across multiple days. One room had a dark liquid spill next to the bed. It also had brown-stained privacy curtains, dirty blinds, and a flycatcher dripping yellow liquid onto the mirror. Other rooms had overwhelming musty smells on every visit, trash debris on the floor, and dirty air vents. One resident told inspectors that they were distressed by the state of their room. On April 16, a surveyor walked into a room and found a strong urine odor. The resident was lying in bed. Their blanket, bedspread, pants, and shirt were saturated with urine. And when staff removed the brief, it was completely soaked through and disintegrating. When they lifted the resident's abdominal fold, there was a bright red inflamed rash underneath. The CNA said it was obvious this resident had been left wet the entire night and into the morning, even though staff are required to check and change incontinent residents at least every 2 hours. There's one more area that I need to mention, and I want to be careful here. Inspectors also cited this facility for violations involving how residents' personal funds were managed. I'm going to quote from the survey. Quote, based on observation, interview, and record review, the facility failed to ensure personal funds withdrawn from the resident trust account were appropriately accounted for. End quote. I'm a personal injury lawyer. Financial exploitation is outside of my practice area. And most importantly, I'm not aware of whether there are any ongoing investigations related to these findings, and I don't want to say anything that interferes with the process that already may be in motion. However, what I will tell you is this. If you are considering this facility or you have a loved one there, read the financial section of this survey for yourself. It starts on page 1, and you'll find the full report on the CMS website or the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services website. Read it, draw your own conclusions, and if you have a loved one there, you might want to talk to the folks about it. And keep in mind, after this survey, they have the opportunity to correct these issues. So this issue may have already been corrected by now, but if you have a loved one there or you're considering it, it might be worth just asking them about this. Hopefully, that issue has been corrected, as well as all these others. If you have a loved one in a Missouri or Illinois nursing home and something just doesn't feel right, my advice always is trust that instinct. You can pull these reports for yourself. I'll put a link in the description below. And if you believe that your family member has been neglected or injured in a nursing home in Missouri or Illinois, you can reach our office at 314-878-9797. I'm happy to talk with you. And finally, to learn how to find and read these reports for yourself, go watch my video, How to Find and Read a Nursing Home Survey. We're going to keep making videos about these individual nursing homes in Missouri and Illinois, so stay tuned, and I'll see you on the next one.